Breaking news has just surfaced about Expedition Bigfoot, and it's far more disturbing than anyone imagined. After years of silence, new information reveals why the hit paranormal series suddenly vanished mid-season. Leaked reports, suppressed footage, and insider testimony all point to one terrifying conclusion. The crew didn't walk away. They were forced to. What they uncovered deep in the wilderness was so shocking, so unprecedented, that production was shut down within days. Stay until the end, because what's coming out now could change everything we thought we knew about the legend of Bigfoot. It all started with silence. No warning, no finale. Just an empty time slot where Expedition Bigfoot was supposed to air. One week, the team was teasing new discoveries from the Pacific Northwest. The next, everything was gone. Episodes pulled, social media wiped, even promotional clips deleted overnight. Fans flooded the network with messages, desperate for an answer, but no one replied. Not the producers, not the cast, not even the streaming platforms. And now, years later, insiders have begun to break that silence, revealing that the show didn't end naturally. It was forcibly shut down. According to leaked production memos, the crew was pulled from the field under emergency extraction protocols during the final days of filming. Helicopters were dispatched, leaving thousands of dollars in gear behind in the mountains. The report described the crew as disoriented, distressed, and unwilling to continue. What could have pushed a veteran team of survival experts, scientists, and ex-military trackers to flee without warning? The most disturbing detail comes from a series of encrypted radio transmissions sent the night before the shutdown. Audio logs later surfaced from a deleted server, panicked voices, static, and one phrase repeated twice before the feed cut. "It's moving around us." The signal abruptly ended. Within 24 hours, filming ceased entirely. Crew members were told to sign non-disclosure agreements under threat of legal action. Even the network executives who greenlit the project have since distanced themselves, declining interviews. The official explanation blamed weather and unexpected logistical issues. But internal notes tell another story, one that refers to evidence of biological anomaly, unclassified vocal phenomena, and potential risk to personnel. These weren't the words of a canceled show. These were the words of a cover-up. Something happened in those woods that made the network stop everything. Something they weren't ready for. And whatever it was, it scared even the people who make their living chasing the impossible. Before the silence, Expedition Bigfoot was more than just a reality show. It was a scientific mission disguised as entertainment. Launched with cutting-edge technology and a team of seasoned investigators, it promised to use data and modern tools to finally prove or disprove the existence of the legendary creature. Leading the charge was Bryce Johnson, a skeptic turned believer, joined by Dr. Maria Mayer, primatologist Russell Acord, and tracker Ronnie LeBlanc. Together, they ventured into uncharted terrain, armed with drones, AI-driven heat sensors, parabolic microphones, and DNA analysis equipment. What set the show apart was its credibility. They weren't relying on blurry photos or tall tales. They were mapping migration routes, analyzing environmental DNA, and cross-referencing sightings with satellite imagery. For the first time, the hunt for Bigfoot looked less like folklore and more like field science. Ratings soared. Viewers weren't just entertained, they were convinced. Each season grew darker, more mysterious, with the team venturing deeper into areas few humans had ever explored. But behind the scenes, something was changing. Crew logs from the final season revealed technical failures that made no sense. Batteries dying instantly, GPS units spinning in circles, radio frequencies jamming for hours. At first, they blamed weather interference. Then, the animals started disappearing. Trail cameras captured movement that didn't match any known species. Massive prints appeared overnight, too deep, too far apart, too perfect. Production notes from the show's final expedition hinted at tension in the camp. The crew was sleeping in shifts, weapons were being kept within reach, and morale was deteriorating. Something in the woods was following them, not aggressively at first, but closely, intelligently. One journal entry from a camera operator simply read, "It knows we're here." That was the turning point. Expedition Bigfoot had gone from a scientific pursuit to something far more dangerous, a situation spiraling out of control. And in a matter of days, what began as a search for evidence would become a desperate effort to make it out alive. The first real indication that something was wrong came after a long stretch of quiet days in the field. The team had set up base in a remote valley surrounded by dense pine forest and fog-choked ridgelines. For nearly a week, nothing had happened. No sounds, no movement, not even animal tracks. Then, out of nowhere, the sensors came alive. Motion detectors, thermal scanners, and seismic readers all began registering movement from multiple directions at once. The readings were massive, fast, and precise. Dr. Maria Mayer later described it as controlled chaos. Whatever was moving out there wasn't stumbling through the brush. It was circling them. Russell and Maria were the first to follow the signal. They trekked half a mile down a riverbank and froze at what they saw. A massive handprint pressed deep into the mud. The palm alone measured nearly 14 inches across, and the finger indentations were so distinct they could see skin texture. It wasn't a bear. It wasn't human. It was something else entirely. You could feel the power in that print, Russell later said. Whatever made it was watching us. Back at camp, the energy shifted. The team, normally excited by new evidence, was quiet, uneasy. The forest grew unnaturally still. Even the insects went silent. As night fell, Bryce reviewed the thermal drones and saw movement, a tall, upright heat signature darting between trees before vanishing behind a ridge. It didn't behave like an animal avoiding danger. It moved as if it understood it was being watched. Then came the sounds, low, guttural calls echoing from every direction. The microphones captured faint responses miles apart, like a language being spoken between unseen figures. Ronnie tried to dismiss it as echo or wildlife, but the tone and rhythm didn't match anything known. At one point, Maria whispered, "It's not calling out, it's communicating." The unease turned to dread when a camera crew found trees freshly marked with deep claw gashes nearly 10 feet high. The bark was torn, the sap still wet. That was the first night the team armed themselves, not out of paranoia, but instinct. Bryce's journal entry from that evening read, "It's here, it's watching, and I think it wants us to know." The next morning, their camp perimeter sensors tripped again, but this time there were no thermal signatures, no movement on camera, only the faint outline of another handprint on the metal supply case near the tents. A perfect match to the one by the river. Something wasn't running from them anymore. It had stepped out of legend and was now toying with them. By the fourth week of the expedition, curiosity had turned into quiet fear. The forest, once alive with the hum of night insects and echoing bird calls, had gone dead silent. The crew was exhausted, running on adrenaline and dread. Then, early one morning, Maria and Russ followed a foul smell drifting through the trees, a thick metallic odor of blood and decay. When they reached the clearing, what they found froze them in place. It wasn't an animal kill like they'd seen before. It was a massacre. The ground was torn apart, splintered branches, drag marks, and bones. Dozens of bones. But they weren't scattered the way scavengers leave them. They were clean, deliberate, arranged almost symmetrically. Ribs snapped at precise angles, joints separated with unnerving accuracy. Maria knelt beside what looked like the remains of a deer, but its spine had been severed cleanly, as if by surgical force. Around it were massive impressions in the soil, knuckle-shaped, spaced evenly apart, as though something large had moved on all fours. Russ's voice trembled as he radioed back to Bryce. "We've got a kill site, but it's wrong. It's all wrong." When the rest of the crew arrived, the mood shifted from analysis to alarm. The area didn't just look like a feeding ground, it looked like an experiment. Several bones had small circular holes bored into them, the marrow removed. Maria muttered, "This wasn't feeding. This was harvesting." The team documented what they could, but even the hardened survivalists were shaken. Bryce later described the scene as calculated brutality. Every piece of evidence suggested intelligence, not the chaotic violence of a predator, but the methodical precision of something that understood anatomy. They took samples and marked the coordinates, but as they prepared to leave, Russ noticed something that chilled him to his core: a series of massive footprints leading away from the site. The stride was enormous, nearly 6 feet between each step. At the end of the trail, pressed deep into the mud, was another handprint. That night, the crew sat around the campfire, silent. No one spoke. No one reviewed footage. The sound operator refused to wear his headset, saying he kept hearing breathing behind him during playback. By midnight, every piece of equipment began malfunctioning. Batteries drained, lenses fogged, and drones crashed without warning. The forest was reclaiming its silence, and the team knew they had crossed a line. They were no longer documenting a mystery. They were trespassing on something's territory, and whatever it was, it wanted them to know it. The discovery of the kill site changed everything. What began as a scientific search for evidence had now evolved into something far more dangerous and far more intelligent. The team, still reeling from what they'd found, pressed deeper into the valley, following a pattern of heat signatures that seemed to move with purpose. Bryce ordered drones to sweep the ridge, while Maria and Ronnie hiked ahead. What they found that day would alter the tone of the entire investigation. Near the edge of a frozen creek, Maria spotted a formation that, at first glance, looked natural, branches stacked and frozen over. But as they approached, it became clear this wasn't random debris. The logs had been arranged in a deliberate triangular structure, reinforced with moss and stone. Inside were bones, cleaned, organized by size, and several smooth river rocks carved with straight, parallel grooves. It wasn't a den, it was something more. "This was built," Maria whispered. "Someone made this." Russ examined the area and noted something chilling: claw marks etched into nearby trees, not from aggression, but communication. They appeared to be symbols or tally-like carvings, all positioned about 10 feet high. Nearby, a second formation sat partially hidden under a snowdrift. Inside were fragments of animal hides, folded and tied with vines. "This isn't instinct," Bryce said later in his field log. "It's behavior." When they reviewed drone footage that night, they saw movement. A tall figure emerged briefly from the tree line, bending, examining one of the broken structures, almost as if it was aware they had touched it. Then, as if in retaliation, the figure straightened and stared directly at the hovering drone before vanishing back into the shadows. The heat signature showed it moving fast, but controlled, almost deliberate. The next day, the team returned to the site and found the formation destroyed. Branches snapped, rocks scattered, and deep footprints circling their previous steps. Maria described feeling watched from every direction. The forest had gone completely still again, but the silence didn't feel natural anymore. It felt intelligent, responsive. When they reported their findings to the production base, the network told them to keep filming but avoid speculation. Bryce ignored that order. He and the crew privately concluded that what they were tracking wasn't a primitive species. It was a parallel one, something that adapted, observed, and understood human presence. A being capable of thought, strategy, and retaliation. From that moment on, the expedition shifted from pursuit to survival. As Bryce put it later, "We weren't studying it anymore. It was studying us." Back at the base camp, Bryce spent hours reviewing audio data captured by parabolic microphones scattered across the forest. For days, he heard nothing but wind, distant birds, and the occasional creak of trees. Then, one night, something surfaced, faint at first, buried beneath the static. A low, resonant tone that didn't match any known animal call. It rose and fell rhythmically, almost like speech. Bryce leaned closer, adjusting the filters. The sound repeated, this time accompanied by another, lower voice, overlapping, almost conversational. He froze. "That's not random," he whispered into his recorder. "That's language." The team assembled around the monitor as Bryce replayed the file. The voices were deep, guttural, yet unnervingly articulate. They weren't growling or mimicking. They were communicating. The syllables came in patterns, 3 distinct phrases, followed by a pause, then repeated again with tonal variation. The forest itself seemed to breathe with the sound. Dr. Maria Mayer sent the sample to linguist Dr. Ronald Casper, who had previously studied suspected suspected Bigfoot vocalization. His reply arrived within hours. These are structured vocal patterns. They demonstrate repetition, response, and tonal shifts, clear signs of linguistic intelligence. As they continued analyzing the recordings, something even more disturbing emerged. There weren't just two voices. There were multiple, some closer, some distant, weaving in and out of one another like a coordinated chant. One phrase, however, appeared consistently. A word-like sound the team later transcribed as "Kumba." The deeper voice would say it first, the others would respond, and then silence. The atmosphere in the tent turned cold. Bryce noted that the ambient noise dropped nearly to zero during the playback. Even the surrounding microphones went dead for 8 full seconds. Maria theorized that Kumba might be a name, or perhaps a signal. Russ, however, had another theory, that it wasn't meant for them, but about them. "What if they're not warning each other?" he asked quietly. "What if they're calling us?" The crew immediately placed motion sensors around the camp perimeter. That night, just before 3 a.m., the recorders picked up a single knock on wood, followed by a faint echo of that same voice, low and deliberate. "Kumba." The crew rushed outside, lights scanning the darkness, but there was nothing. No footprints, no movement, only that echoing word fading through the trees. The next morning, Bryce radioed the network, requesting backup and authorization to retreat. The response he received was chillingly bureaucratic. Continue documentation until further notice. They were being told to stay, even as the forest began speaking back. Within days of the mysterious recordings, the Expedition Bigfoot camp changed from a scientific operation to something that looked more like a military outpost. Security tightened. Communication with the outside world was heavily restricted. Producers stopped giving daily updates to the network. Then, without warning, everything collapsed into chaos. An anonymous member of the post-production team leaked a short clip of the forest audio to a small online forum, less than 30 seconds long. In it, 2 distinct voices could be heard exchanging what sounded unmistakably like words. The clip ended abruptly, with a sound that resembled a deep exhale, followed by static. Within hours, the file spread like wildfire. People analyzed, slowed, and filtered it. Linguists, conspiracy theorists, and cryptozoologists all agreed on one thing: the cadence and tone were unlike any known animal. The word Kumba could clearly be heard. Then, just as quickly as it appeared, the file vanished. Every copy was deleted. Forum pages were shut down, and those who had shared it received legal takedown notices. The user who first uploaded the clip deleted their account, leaving behind only one cryptic post: "We were told to stop. They said it wasn't human." That was when the network went dark. Expedition Bigfoot was pulled from every platform within 48 hours. Promotional content disappeared, websites redirected to error pages, and even the show's trailer on YouTube was removed. Crew contracts were terminated under strict non-disclosure agreements. Sources close to production said they were threatened with legal action if they ever discussed what happened in the woods. Inside the team, fear spread fast. Ronnie reportedly began having vivid nightmares, claiming he could still hear the voices whispering in the static. Maria stopped taking calls. Bryce, once the optimistic believer, went silent entirely. His final email to staff simply read, "Some things aren't meant to be recorded." Behind the scenes, there were whispers of government involvement. Unmarked vehicles were seen near the production site, and the storage facility housing the raw footage was reportedly confiscated for review. But no official agency ever confirmed their role. Whether it was corporate liability, national security, or sheer terror, the message was clear. Whatever the team had captured was never meant for public ears. By the time the dust settled, Expedition Bigfoot no longer existed. To the outside world, it was just another canceled show. But to those who were there, it was something else entirely. An operation that stumbled across the unexplainable and was shut down before the truth could escape. When the dust finally settled, Expedition Bigfoot had vanished from existence as if it had never been there. Not a single press release, no farewell post, no official statement from Discovery or Travel Channel, just silence. The show's streaming pages redirected to blank placeholders, and fans who searched for old episodes were met with error messages. To the public, it looked like an abrupt corporate decision, but to those close to the production, it looked like something far more deliberate. Crew members later admitted that they'd been ordered to surrender all footage, field notes, and personal devices used on location. Those who resisted were reminded of their contracts and threatened with lawsuits. One anonymous technician described how security personnel arrived without warning at the editing studio, collected every hard drive, and sealed them in unmarked cases. When asked what was going on, a supervisor reportedly said, "The footage is being transferred to another department." No one knew which department, or if it even belonged to the network. Bryce Johnson, the show's host, broke his silence months later during a low-profile podcast appearance. His tone was somber, his words careful. "Some discoveries change you," he said, "and some discoveries change everything." When pressed to elaborate, he refused, adding only, "We found something that looked back at us." That single line reignited the mystery. Fans flooded social media demanding the truth, but Bryce vanished again. No further interviews, no social posts, nothing. Meanwhile, Maria Mayer and Russ Accord quietly moved on to other projects, refusing to discuss the expedition. Ronnie LeBlanc reportedly left the field entirely, citing psychological fatigue. Insiders claim several team members experienced insomnia, paranoia, and recurring nightmares involving deep voices calling their names from the woods. Then came the final twist. The area where the expedition took place was suddenly declared off-limits for environmental conservation. Local hikers reported new fences, motion-activated cameras, and warning signs where none had existed before. Some said they saw military-style trucks entering the region at night. Others heard strange sounds in the distance, deep, rhythmic calls echoing through the trees. Whether it was corporate damage control or a government cover-up, one thing was certain. Expedition Bigfoot hadn't just been canceled, it had been erased, and those who knew the truth weren't allowed to speak, because whatever they'd found out there was still out there. Tonight, we're diving into a story that the Travel Channel doesn't want you to see. Expedition Bigfoot's lead primatologist, Dr. Maria Mayer, has just broken her silence, and what she's revealed about a banned Bigfoot video has shocked even her fellow researchers. The clip, which was allegedly confiscated during filming, was said to contain evidence so disturbing that the network refused to air it, claiming it violated broadcast safety standards. But insiders say the real reason runs much deeper. A government lockdown, blacked-out memory cards, and one scientist now risking everything to tell the truth. Hit subscribe, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why Expedition Bigfoot might never return. It was supposed to be a routine night in the Pacific Northwest, just another day on location for Expedition Bigfoot. The team had split into two groups, one following vocalization readings in the valley, the other, led by Dr. Maria Mayer, heading into the dense forest near Mount St. Helens, an area notorious for unexplained sightings. The air was thick, humid, and eerily quiet. Maria, a world-renowned primatologist and former National Geographic explorer, had spent years chasing legends around the globe. But this night, she would capture something no scientist was prepared for. Around 2:43 a.m., Maria's thermal drone detected movement, large, upright, and fast. Thinking it might be a bear, she ordered the team to switch to infrared and began recording. What appeared on the monitor made her stop breathing. A massive bipedal figure, at least 8 feet tall, striding across a clearing with fluid, deliberate motion. Its heat signature pulsed brighter than anything in the area, almost unnaturally warm. She whispered, "That's no human." The crew's cameras caught a few seconds before the signal cut out. When they tried to replay it, the video wouldn't load. Static, corrupted data. But the drone's onboard drive had kept a local backup. When they extracted it later, what they saw made everyone in the room go silent. The footage showed the creature pausing, turning its head toward the drone, and then vanishing into the trees in a single, unnatural leap. Mireya insisted on submitting the evidence to the network. Hours later, representatives from the Travel Channel arrived unexpectedly, taking the SD cards and warning the crew to discuss nothing publicly. According to insiders, they claimed the material contained unauthorized classified content. That was the moment Expedition Bigfoot changed forever. The footage footage was never broadcast. The network went dark on updates, and for the first time, Mireya Mayer began to suspect that what they encountered in those woods wasn't just a legend. It was something someone didn't want the world to see. Within 48 hours of that night, Expedition Bigfoot's entire operation was abruptly frozen. Crew members received emergency calls ordering them to pack up camp and return to the production base immediately. Drones were grounded. Cameras were collected. The show's director was told by upper management that federal oversight had stepped in for security reasons. Mireya thought it was a joke until 3 men in dark tactical gear arrived at the field base, identifying themselves only as consultants. They carried metallic cases, logged the footage drives, and sealed them with tamper-proof tags. Every digital file, every drone card, every recording, gone. The explanation given later was vague. Technical malfunction, data recovery, privacy liability. But to those who were there, it felt like something far more serious. Crew members later described an almost military-style sweep, with encrypted laptops taken and hard drives wiped remotely. One audio engineer said his laptop rebooted mid-edit with the message, "Access revoked by external administrator." Mireya tried to protest. She argued that she was the scientific lead, that any biological evidence should go to peer review, not corporate storage. The response was chilling. "This isn't your jurisdiction anymore, doctor." The next morning, production trucks were gone. Only empty tents remained where the team had camped. When Mireya contacted the Travel Channel's executive office, they refused to discuss it. The only official statement she received was that Expedition Bigfoot was going on creative hiatus. But what haunted her most was the timing. The blackout happened mere hours after the footage was transmitted through a secured uplink. Someone else had been monitoring their signal. That was the moment Mireya realized this wasn't a cancellation. It was containment. And whatever was on that footage wasn't just Bigfoot. It was evidence of a classified encounter the government had been suppressing for decades. Weeks after the abrupt shutdown, whispers began surfacing online from inside the Expedition Bigfoot production team. A former assistant editor, under the alias Orion, claimed to have saved a single still frame from the confiscated footage before the system purge. Late one night, that frame leaked, briefly appearing on a cryptid researcher forum before it was deleted within minutes. But hundreds had already seen it, and what it showed would haunt every one of them. In the image, a massive humanoid figure stood between 2 pine trees, partially obscured by fog. Its proportions were all wrong, the shoulders impossibly broad, the arms nearly reaching the knees, the head sloping backward like a gorilla's, yet unmistakably human in outline. Behind it, faint red glows reflected in the brush, as though smaller eyes were peering from the darkness. What disturbed viewers most wasn't just the creature's appearance, it was the expression caught mid-motion. It wasn't running, it was watching. Within hours, the image was flagged by automatic copyright claims from an unfamiliar company called Northfield Research LLC, registered in Virginia, the same state that houses several federal intelligence facilities. Cryptid researchers noticed metadata anomalies, GPS coordinates embedded in the photo file that pointed not to the Pacific Northwest, but to an airbase near Yakima, known for classified testing grounds. When questioned about the leak, the network denied its authenticity, but sources close to the production confirmed that the lighting, terrain, and Mireya's equipment matched what was used that night. According to one sound tech, that's the exact clearing where we lost the drone feed. It's not fake, it's the frame. For a brief moment, the internet buzzed with speculation that Expedition Bigfoot had stumbled upon more than a cryptid, perhaps a classified biological entity connected to ancient DNA study. Then, almost overnight, all discussion vanished. Forums shut down, threads deleted, and users who shared the image reported being locked out of their accounts. It was as if someone, or something, was erasing every trace of it ever existing. After the leaked frame exploded online, Dr. Mireya Mayer found herself at the center of something she no longer controlled. Interview requests poured in, and rumors swirled that she was preparing to go public with what really happened in those woods. But just days later, she vanished from social media without explanation. Her verified accounts, Twitter, Instagram, even her personal website, were wiped clean, leaving only the message temporarily deactivated for maintenance. To her followers, it looked routine. To those who knew her, it was chilling. Mireya never went silent. Privately, crew members said she had become increasingly paranoid. One close colleague revealed that Mireya told him she was being followed. White SUVs parked outside her home, phone interference, strange emails with attachments she never opened. She allegedly showed him an official-looking cease and desist letter bearing the logo of an unknown division, Office of Biological Anomalies and Extraterrestrial Phenomena. It warned her that releasing classified ecological data would be considered a national security breach. Then, in what many now call the Miami incident, Mireya was scheduled to speak at a university lecture about undiscovered primates. Moments before going on stage, two unidentified men approached event staff and asked to escort Dr. Mayer for a private discussion. Witnesses said she appeared startled, then reluctantly left with them. The lecture was abruptly canceled. Mireya didn't resurface publicly for almost 2 weeks. When she did, it was on a heavily edited network video where she appeared calm but distant, repeating the same statement. The footage was inconclusive. We found no verifiable evidence of an unidentified species. Viewers immediately noticed her tone was robotic, rehearsed. Her eyes kept shifting away from the camera, as if reading a script. Audio analysts later confirmed faint echo signatures suggesting digital manipulation in the background track. It wasn't live. It was recorded, approved, and released under supervision. Whatever Mireya had planned to reveal had been buried, and her silence wasn't voluntary. The truth had been replaced with a broadcast-friendly lie. But behind the scenes, a small number of the crew refused to stay quiet, and what they uncovered next would prove even more disturbing. After Mireya's forced silence, the Expedition Bigfoot team began fracturing under pressure. Some members returned to their normal lives, refusing to talk. Others, however, couldn't shake what they had witnessed. The night vision footage, the missing data drives, the men who arrived unannounced claiming to be government contractors. The producers had promised that everyone's safety was guaranteed, yet within weeks, strange things started happening. A cameraman's home was broken into, nothing stolen except his external hard drives. A sound engineer received a late-night phone call where a calm, anonymous voice said only, "We know what you saw," then hung up. 3 members decided to fight back. They met secretly in a motel outside Portland, Oregon, under the guise of a production debrief. What they actually did was begin compiling every piece of evidence that survived the purge. Duplicate footage fragments stored on cloud backups, deleted radio logs, even a transcript of Mireya's last recorded satellite call. The team called themselves the Continuum, a private archive dedicated to preserving what was almost erased from history. According to one insider, what they recovered wasn't a full video, but a data stream, thermal readings showing multiple heat signatures circling the team's camp hours before the encounter. These signatures moved with intent. They flanked the group, merged, separated, and finally disappeared into a ravine that didn't exist on any official map. One frame, when enhanced, revealed a faint triangular reflection, metallic, geometric, artificial. It wasn't an animal, one former technician insisted. It was organized. The Continuum tried to contact Mireya to confirm the data, but she wouldn't answer. Her assistant eventually sent a cryptic reply. They warned her not to engage. She's being monitored. Weeks later, 2 of the Continuum members' emails were hacked. Files vanished. An encrypted message appeared in their inbox. This case is closed. Terminate all copies. But the damage was done. A handful of frames and logs had already been shared with journalists specializing in defense and aerospace black projects. One of them, under strict anonymity, confirmed that the coordinates where the readings were captured lined up perfectly with a restricted air corridor used by experimental aircraft contractors. The implication was staggering. Either Expedition Bigfoot had stumbled into a covert military test, or something much stranger had been hidden under that same cover for decades. And If that was true, it meant Mireya and her team hadn't just encountered Bigfoot, they had crossed into a classified zone where something non-human was being observed, contained, and protected by forces far beyond television. The Continuum's discoveries didn't stay secret for long. One of their encrypted drives, disguised as a personal backup, was intercepted by what appeared to be cybersecurity contractors tied to the same shadowy agency that silenced Mireya. But before it was seized, an anonymous leaker uploaded a portion of its contents to the dark web. It wasn't the full encounter video, just 8 minutes of raw, corrupted footage. Yet what those 8 minutes contained sent shockwaves through the cryptid and UFO research community. The clip began like any other expedition feed, Mireya and her co-hosts whispering as they navigated through dense forest terrain. But as the camera panned to a clearing, the thermal lens suddenly flared white. In the static, multiple shapes could be seen moving in unison. Not random, not animalistic, but precise. Then came the sound, a low, rhythmic pulse that audio experts later said matched no known wildlife, machinery, or atmospheric interference. It repeated every 13 seconds, a pattern eerily similar to low-frequency communication signals used by naval sonar. At the 4-minute mark, the feed jolted violently. A massive shape lunged past the infrared beam, two glowing eyes reflecting back like polished stone. Mireya's voice could be heard shouting, "It's watching us! It's behind!" before the mic cut out entirely. The next few minutes were chaos. Rustling leaves, heavy footsteps, and then silence. When the footage resumed, the timestamp had jumped ahead by exactly 8 minutes, the missing time. The final frame showed Mireya's face illuminated by a faint blue light. Terrified, confused, whispering, "They don't want this filmed." Forensics experts later determined the file had been deliberately tampered with, not corrupted, but surgically edited, metadata rewritten, time codes overwritten, and geotags replaced. However, one forensic clue remained, a faint watermark appearing in 2 frames that read, "Property of Northfield Systems Division 7. That same division name had already appeared on the cease and desist letter sent to Mireya weeks earlier. When questioned about the footage, both the network and Northfield denied involvement, claiming the video was a deep fake made by online pranksters. But engineers pointed out the footage predated generative AI by years. Others noted the telltale signs of analog distortion, evidence that it was filmed on real thermal cameras, not digitally recreated. Then, almost overnight, the clip vanished from every mirror site and backup link across the web. One forum moderator who had re-uploaded the footage reported receiving a visit from 2 polite men in suits, warning him that he was in violation of the Espionage Act. The message was clear. This wasn't about a TV show anymore. It was about national secrecy. Whatever Mireya Mayer's team filmed in those missing 8 minutes was never meant to reach the public. And the fact that every trace of it had been scrubbed, both digitally and physically, only deepened one terrifying question. What did they actually capture that night? Weeks after the black file vanished, an unlikely figure stepped out of the shadows. A retired defense biologist named Dr. Leon Vargas, who claimed he had once consulted for a government project dealing with biological anomalies of unknown taxonomy. Vargas had worked under a non-disclosure agreement at a facility in Montana in 2015. What caught investigators' attention was the logo on the documents he later shared with a journalist, the same Northfield Systems Division 7 seal that appeared on Mireya's footage. According to Vargas, the division's real mission wasn't building drones or tracking weather. It was studying extraterrestrial biome hybrids, beings he described as intermediaries between human and non-human species. In a secret online interview, Vargas spoke carefully, never revealing his face. He claimed that several of the specimens collected over the years weren't dead. They were alive, sedated, and stored within remote containment sites near former missile silos. But what truly rattled viewers was his statement that one of those creatures had escaped in 2019, somewhere in the Pacific Northwest, the exact year and region Expedition Bigfoot filmed its most controversial episode. "It wasn't random," he said. "They were sent there to monitor the containment zone. They just didn't know it." When asked about Mireya Mayer, Vargas said he believed she had unknowingly documented one of the escaped entities, a creature that appeared humanoid but exhibited non-human locomotion patterns. "You could call it a Bigfoot," he admitted, "but that's not what it is. That's just the term they let the public use." The real designation, he claimed, was Specimen L-17, a life form classified under biocryptic threat protocols. Shortly after the interview aired, Vargas disappeared. His email accounts went dark. His last known correspondence was a short message sent to the journalist he spoke with. "They found me. Don't trust the footage you see next." Days later, a new debunking video suddenly surfaced online. It claimed to show the original thermal clip recreated using Hollywood-level CGI. But experts quickly tore it apart. The lighting was wrong, the thermal diffusion patterns were inconsistent, and worst of all, the supposed recreation used identical timestamps to the missing 8-minute sequence. Someone had re-uploaded the real footage under the guise of a fake. Whether Dr. Vargas had leaked it himself or someone inside Northfield wanted the truth to slip out quietly, one thing became clear. The deeper this story went, the more it seemed that the Expedition Bigfoot incident wasn't an isolated discovery. It was a classified event, buried beneath layers of denial, science, and fear. By early 2025, whispers about the Mireya Files had spread beyond the paranormal community and into mainstream media. Anonymous posts began appearing on encrypted message boards, claiming a high-definition copy of the banned footage still existed, hidden in the servers of a major television network. Then one night, everything changed. A 41-second clip surfaced on an obscure video site, uploaded under the title Raw Camera B, North Cascades. Within hours, it was re-uploaded hundreds of times before vanishing from nearly every platform, but not before thousands had seen it. In the grainy footage, Mireya could be seen standing in front of the tree line, her thermal camera trained on something massive just beyond the light. Behind her, a producer whispered, "It's moving again." A moment later, two glowing shapes darted between trees, upright, impossibly fast, yet eerily silent. The camera shook violently as something emitted a low-frequency rumble that distorted the audio waveform. Then, for less than a second, the frame froze, revealing two amber eyes reflecting light like molten glass, before the feed cut to black. Viewers were stunned. Some called it the most compelling cryptid footage ever recorded. Others said it was a psyop, a controlled leak meant to redirect public attention from something far larger. Within 12 hours, the network that had aired Expedition Bigfoot released a carefully worded statement denying the clip's authenticity. But the language was strange. It didn't call the footage fake. It called it unauthorized. That single word lit a wildfire. Every major outlet demanded answers. Talk show hosts speculated whether Mireya was under a gag order. Reddit threads broke down every frame, noting details like reflected infrared wavelengths and the faint outline of what looked like metallic implants glinting beneath the creature's skin. Then the takedowns began. The network filed dozens of copyright claims. The accounts of those who had shared the footage were suddenly suspended, sometimes within minutes. Even stranger, a few users reported in-person visits from unidentified men who demanded they delete the files for their own safety. Through all of this, Mireya stayed silent. Her social media accounts went dark, her public appearances canceled, and her PR team stopped responding to any inquiries. But 1 week later, a final update appeared briefly on her verified page before being deleted. A single line that read, "They told me not to show it, but it's already too late." That cryptic post would be the last public message ever attributed to Mireya Mayer. What came next would prove that whatever she captured wasn't just a myth. It was evidence the world was never meant to see. Breaking news from Expedition Bigfoot, and this time, it's not another wild claim from the woods. Bryce Johnson, one of the lead investigators, has come forward with something that Discovery Channel never wanted the public to hear. What he revealed about what really happened deep in those forests is disturbing and could change everything we thought we knew about the show. In the next few minutes, we're going to uncover the truth Bryce said was never meant to be released, why footage from Season 4 was quietly removed, and how a secret team may have interfered with the investigation. Whatever he found, it terrified him. And once you hear what he confessed, you'll understand why this story is shaking the entire paranormal community. Make sure you subscribe right now, because what comes next might not stay online for long. Before the headlines, before the interviews, Bryce Johnson was known as the calm, level-headed voice of Expedition Bigfoot. He wasn't the one chasing shadows or screaming in the woods. He was the skeptic, the steady presence who kept the team grounded, while others let their imaginations run wild. But over the last few weeks, Bryce's name has exploded across the internet for reasons no one saw coming. The man who once laughed off conspiracy theories is now at the center of one. And what he's revealed is so disturbing, so unexpected, that even longtime fans of the show are struggling to believe it. It all started during the filming of a new season deep in Washington state, the same dense forests where more Bigfoot sightings have been reported than anywhere else in North America. According to Bryce, the crew wasn't alone out there. From the first night, strange activity began around camp. Heavy footsteps circled their tents, branches snapped in patterns that felt deliberate, and distant, guttural sounds echoed through the trees. At first, Bryce thought it was wildlife, but when they reviewed thermal footage the next morning, something didn't add up. On screen, behind one of the crew members, a large upright figure appeared briefly before vanishing into the brush. It wasn't a bear. It was taller, slimmer, and moving in a way that seemed almost calculated. Bryce demanded they analyze the footage frame by frame. The next day, the clip was gone. Producers claimed a corrupted file, but Bryce didn't buy it. He started keeping private notes and audio logs, describing things the audience never saw: flashing lights between the treetops, distorted whispers that mimicked crew voices, and a sensation that something was watching them with intelligence, not instinct. What Bryce didn't know then was that this footage would never see the light of day, and the truth about what they found would lead to a chain of events that ended with him breaking his silence in the most shocking way imaginable. Bryce Johnson's breaking point began with a single piece of footage, one the public was never supposed to see. It happened during the third week of filming in the Olympic National Forest, an area known for its eerie, unexplained activity. According to Bryce, the team was running a late-night perimeter check when one of the cameramen, Ethan, caught something unusual through the thermal lens. At first, it looked like heat signatures flickering between the trees, but when they zoomed in, everyone froze. The shape was massive, nearly 8 feet tall, and moving in complete silence. It seemed to be watching them. Ethan kept filming until the figure turned, exposing its outline against the thermal contrast. The problem was, it didn't look entirely solid. Its edges flickered like static, as if part of its body wasn't fully there. The creature, or whatever it was, moved forward, gliding more than walking. The next moment, the entire camera feed distorted, static, screeching audio. Then, nothing. The power cut out across every device they had running. When power returned 20 minutes later, the footage appeared intact, but just barely. Bryce insisted they back it up immediately. He took a copy on his personal laptop and handed the original drive to production. By morning, both files were gone. The footage wasn't corrupted, it was erased, and not just deleted, wiped clean. Their tech operator confirmed the drives had been manually reformatted sometime around 3:12 a.m., right after the encounter. Bryce confronted the producers, demanding an explanation. They brushed it off as a data malfunction caused by moisture or magnetic interference. But the lead cameraman revealed something that made Bryce's blood run cold. Around the same time the footage disappeared, 2 unmarked vehicles had been spotted parked off the logging road near camp. No one on the crew recognized them. By dawn, they were gone. Later that week, Bryce received a message from a private number. It contained a single image, a blurry, still frame from that very encounter, and 3 words beneath it: "Stop showing this." He didn't know who sent it, but from that moment on, the tone of Expedition Bigfoot changed. Security was suddenly tightened. The crew was told to stay in pairs, and every card, every drive, was logged by a new consultant no one had ever seen before. Bryce's unease turned into obsession. He began questioning whether the show he had helped create was being monitored, and if someone out there, or something, wanted their discovery to vanish forever. After the incident with the deleted footage, Bryce Johnson's skepticism began to crumble. He wasn't the same calm investigator the audience remembered. Something had shifted. He started digging into every hard drive, every GPS log, every email thread connected to Expedition Bigfoot. That's when he stumbled across something he wasn't meant to find. A folder labeled Northwind Access, buried deep within the production's encrypted server. Inside were coordinates that didn't match any of the publicized filming location. They pointed to an area nearly 40 miles north of their supposed base camp, land that, on paper, didn't even exist. Bryce cross-referenced it with Google Earth, but the imagery blurred out halfway through the terrain, as if deliberately censored. He took the coordinates to the field team, but producers immediately shut him down, claiming it was a private reserve owned by the federal government. Still, Bryce couldn't let it go. A few days later, he approached a former production assistant named Greg Hill, who quietly admitted that Expedition Bigfoot had filmed there before, under military escort. Greg claimed that during Season 2, a small off-record crew had been granted permission to explore this restricted zone for less than 24 hours. The reason? A thermal anomaly spotted on satellite imaging that appeared to move across several miles of dense forest in a single night. According to Greg, everyone involved signed non-disclosure agreements, but one detail slipped through the cracks. The anomaly emitted electromagnetic interference that caused drone batteries to drain instantly. It wasn't an animal, Greg told Bryce. It was something bigger, something powered. Bryce's discovery confirmed his growing fear. The show wasn't just about tracking folklore anymore. They were being led into areas tied to classified research, possibly connected to the government's quiet interest in non-human biological entities. The deeper he looked, the more he realized Expedition Bigfoot might not have been documenting a legend at all. It might have been walking straight into one of America's most guarded secrets. After Bryce uncovered the hidden coordinates, the tension among the Expedition Bigfoot team grew unbearable. Everyone could feel it. Something was off. Their usual excitement for the hunt had turned into quiet paranoia. Crew members stopped talking freely around the cameras, and producers insisted all footage be reviewed before Bryce or anyone else could see it. Then, one night in late November, something happened that none of them have ever fully recovered from. It was near the end of their shoot in the Olympic Peninsula. The crew had set up camp near a ridge overlooking a fog-choked valley. Bryce, along with Ronnie LeBlanc and a small team, was preparing for a night surveillance run when they realized one of their drone operators, Chris Hayden, hadn't returned from scouting a nearby trail. He'd left less than 30 minutes earlier to set up a new camera angle, but his walkie-talkie had gone silent. At first, they assumed it was another equipment failure, but when they tried to track his GPS signal, they realized something was wrong. Chris's locator pinged erratically for about 2 minutes, first a quarter-mile east of camp, then suddenly 4 miles north. The signal then cut out entirely. Bryce, Ronnie, and 2 others grabbed flashlights and hiked toward the last known location. When they reached it, they found the drone still powered on, its rotors spinning in the dirt, but Chris was gone. The only sign of him was his headset, lying next to a tree snapped clean in half, as if crushed under immense force. For hours they searched, calling his name, firing flares, but there was no trace. By sunrise, local authorities were brought in, though curiously, the rangers who arrived weren't locals. They were escorted by 2 men in black uniforms with no visible identification. They refused to answer questions and ordered the Expedition Bigfoot crew to leave the area immediately. That same afternoon, Bryce was handed a statement to read on camera. It claimed Chris had left due to a personal emergency. Bryce refused. He didn't just walk off, he later said. Something took him. Days later, the footage from that night, including the search, vanished from the archives, replaced with generic filler shots. Bryce realized the pattern was clear. Every time they got too close to something real, someone stepped in and erased it. But this time, it wasn't just data that disappeared, it was a person. And Bryce couldn't shake the feeling that what happened to Chris was a warning, not just to the team, but to him personally. In the days following Chris Hayden's disappearance, Bryce Johnson spiraled into a sleepless obsession. He wasn't just trying to figure out what had happened to his missing crewmate, he was trying to understand why every trace of him was being scrubbed clean. By now, every member of Expedition Bigfoot was under constant supervision from network advisors, mysterious figures who had appeared on set overnight. Their badges bore no company logos, their names were never shared, and their presence was justified only as security. Bryce knew better. One night, while reviewing leftover backup footage from the ridge, he found something strange buried in the audio files. It was an encrypted frequency spike, an odd rhythmic signal repeating every few seconds. To the untrained ear, it was just static. But when Bryce slowed it down, a hidden sequence of tones emerged. He sent the audio to a former sound engineer he trusted from the Ancient Aliens production team. The response came back hours later in a single encrypted text. "You're not supposed to have this. It's a code, and it's human-made." The sound wasn't random. It was a pattern of transmissions, coordinates embedded within the sound waves themselves. When Bryce plotted them, his stomach dropped. The points led to a stretch of land inside restricted territory at Fort Lewis, Washington, a known government testing ground for aerospace technology. But here's the chilling part. Those coordinates were only 12 miles away from where Chris had vanished. Bryce wanted answers, so he reached out to a contact in a private intelligence group. What they told him nearly made him abandon the show altogether. The code embedded in the recording was a distress signal formatted in a way used by experimental Black Ops communication systems, frequencies that weren't supposed to exist outside military hands. The timestamp on the data, the same hour Chris went missing. Someone, or something, was trying to send a message. The realization consumed Bryce. If this was a rescue signal, why cover it up? Why lie about Chris's disappearance? The only logical explanation was that Expedition Bigfoot had stumbled into classified territory, something far bigger than a myth in the woods. That night, Bryce received another text from an anonymous number. "You're getting too close, Johnson. Stop decoding what you don't understand." He didn't know it yet, but this was only the beginning of the nightmare. After weeks of paranoia and sleepless nights, Bryce Johnson finally broke his silence, but not on camera. Late one evening, during a live stream meant to promote Expedition Bigfoot's new season, viewers noticed that Bryce seemed unusually tense. His smile was forced, his eyes darted off screen, as though he expected someone to burst through the door. He cut the stream short, claiming a technical issue. But less than an hour later, a private audio clip began circulating online, allegedly leaked from a conversation Bryce had with a close friend in production. In the recording, Bryce admitted he had been warned to stop asking questions about the missing footage and the restricted coordinates. He claimed the warning didn't come from the network. It came from someone above that. When his friend pressed him to explain, Bryce's voice dropped to a whisper. "They told me I saw something I wasn't supposed to, and they said, if I talk, I'll end up like Chris." The clip grew darker from there. Bryce described how his hotel room key stopped working days after the discovery, how he'd find his phone battery drained overnight, even when powered off, and how an unmarked black SUV had followed him from Los Angeles to Oregon while he was visiting family. "I thought it was paranoia," he said. "Then they sent me photos of me from that night in the woods, shots that were never filmed by my team." When the audio leaked to Reddit and paranormal forums, it spread like wildfire. Fans began demanding answers, tagging Travel Channel and Discovery executives. But instead of addressing it, the companies doubled down on silence. Bryce disappeared from public appearances for nearly 2 weeks, missing interviews and scheduled conventions. When he finally re-emerged, he looked gaunt and nervous, as though he hadn't slept in days. He refused to discuss the leaked audio, stating only, "There are things out there that aren't meant for TV, and some of them are watching us." It was no longer entertainment. It was a warning, and for Bryce Johnson, it might have already been too late. After Bryce Johnson's ominous return, things took a darker turn. Determined to prove that he wasn't losing his mind, he convinced a small film crew, trusted colleagues who had once worked on the earliest seasons, to accompany him back to the last known Expedition Bigfoot location. He wanted closure, or proof, or both. What he found instead was something that defied every law of nature he'd ever studied. The group set out deep into the forest near Mount Hood, Oregon, the same area where several episodes had been filmed before being abruptly pulled from rotation. At first, it was just like any other shoot: drone footage, tracking equipment, static cameras mounted to trees. But hours in, their monitors began to glitch. Compass readings reversed direction, drone feeds froze mid-air, and when night fell, the forest came alive with sounds that didn't match any species native to the Pacific Northwest. Bryce claimed later that what happened next was caught on one of the few cameras that didn't lose signal. At 2:47 a.m., a massive heat signature appeared on the thermal scanner. It moved on two legs but emitted no body heat consistent with mammals. Its core temperature was far below freezing. When they tried to approach, a high-pitched hum filled the air, so powerful it caused one cameraman to collapse. Then, clear as day, the team heard it, a deep, resonant voice echoing through the trees, repeating a single phrase: "Do not return." Bryce froze. It wasn't broadcast over a speaker, it wasn't human. The voice was coming from the forest itself. The next morning, the team found their gear destroyed, lenses cracked, memory cards melted, and tree bark around their campsite seared in circular patterns, as if by heat from above. When Bryce returned home, one drive still worked, a corrupted video file that, when stabilized, showed an indistinct shape hovering among the trees. The strangest part? The figure's outline matched the same 7-foot form seen in the banned Expedition Bigfoot pilot episode, the one that mysteriously vanished from network archives years earlier. Bryce had his evidence now, but the cost of revealing it would be devastating. When Bryce Johnson returned from Mount Hood, he was shaken but determined. He had seen too much to stay quiet. Within 48 hours, he reached out to a trusted contact at the Travel Channel, promising to deliver what he called the missing proof, a corrupted but partially recoverable file from the night in the woods. He believed it showed direct evidence that something intelligent and possibly non-human had been manipulating the Expedition Bigfoot crew for years. But before he could even hand it over, the network pulled the plug. First came the subtle warnings. The production office was temporarily closed for restructuring. The cast's contracts were under review. Then the official statement: Expedition Bigfoot is entering an indefinite hiatus due to creative realignment. Fans were furious. Bryce, however, wasn't surprised. He'd already been tipped off by a former producer who told him bluntly they were told to shut it down. Orders came from higher up. That night, Bryce went live on his personal Instagram account to tell fans what had really happened. The stream lasted only 9 minutes, but it set the internet ablaze. His voice trembled as he said, "They told us we were chasing folklore. We weren't. We were chasing something they already knew was real, something they wanted buried." Within hours, the video vanished from all platforms. His account was locked, his posts wiped, and his publicist announced he was taking a mental health break. But leaked screenshots from crew group chats told another story. Conversations about unmarked trucks near the production camp, about deleted files reappearing with new timestamps, and about Bryce receiving a call from an unknown number saying, "You've shown too much." By the next day, Expedition Bigfoot was completely erased from Travel Channel's upcoming schedule. Reruns disappeared. Promotional clips vanished. Even YouTube interviews with Bryce were taken down without explanation. Fans called it censorship. Insiders called it damage control. But Bryce's final private message to a colleague said it best. They didn't cancel the show because it failed. They canceled it because we found what they were afraid of. The truth was out there, and someone was making sure it stayed hidden. Days after the Expedition Bigfoot purge, a strange upload appeared on an anonymous account under the name Forest Signal 1977. It was only 37 seconds long, but viewers immediately recognized Bryce Johnson's voice. His tone was calm, almost defeated. "If you're seeing this, it means they got to me." The footage wasn't fake, it was real. But it wasn't Bigfoot. Not exactly. It was something else, something that's been here long before us. The clip showed fragments of the corrupted video from Mount Hood, a trembling night vision frame of a massive shadow moving between trees, its outline distorting like static. Then, a sudden flash of light and a sound that made listeners' ears ring. The video cut to black. Within an hour, it vanished from the internet entirely, replaced by copyright takedown notices from unknown claimants. Bryce Johnson hasn't been seen publicly since. Fans claim his home in Los Angeles was emptied overnight, with neighbors reporting black SUVs parked outside earlier that week. The network refuses to comment, calling it a personal matter. But those who heard his final words can't forget them. Bryce said there were others, that the creature wasn't alone, and that it was waiting. Whether that message was a warning or a farewell, no one knows. Now, only one question remains. Was Bryce silenced because of what he discovered, or because he was about to tell the world the truth? For years, Expedition Bigfoot has searched the most remote corners of America for proof of the impossible. But during one mission deep in the Oregon wilderness, ex-Marine tracker Russell Acord saw something that made him question everything he thought he knew. What started as a standard field operation turned into a tactical nightmare. Heat signatures moving in perfect formation, technology failing, and data that mysteriously vanished before anyone could review it. Now, Russell is finally speaking out. What he found in those woods wasn't human, and what happened after the cameras stopped rolling will change how you see the entire series. Make sure you're subscribed, because this is the footage they tried to erase. When Expedition Bigfoot launched its Oregon operation, no one expected it to become the most secretive mission in the show's history. The team was well prepared. Advanced drones, high-resolution thermal scopes, motion-triggered cameras, and a precise search grid mapped by military-grade GPS. At the center of it all was Russell Acord, a former Marine turned survival expert, responsible for the team's tactical safety. For him, it was supposed to be just another hunt. Gather evidence, record data, analyze movement patterns. But from the moment they arrived in the Cascades, things didn't feel right. The forest was unnervingly silent. Even the local wildlife seemed to have vanished. Experienced trackers know that silence means something bigger is out there, predator or otherwise. The first 3 nights were uneventful, but on the 4th, everything changed. At approximately 2:03 a.m., while reviewing thermal footage from a drone sweep, the team spotted movement. Not a single creature, but 5. Their heat signatures glowed red against the black valley below, moving in what appeared to be a V-shaped pattern, like soldiers advancing through fog. Russell initially dismissed it as a group of hikers, or maybe elk, but the thermal readouts showed each figure standing well over 7 feet tall, and their strides measured nearly 4 feet in length. More alarming, they were moving uphill, fast, through terrain that would take an experienced hiker hours to climb. They were synchronized, Russell said later. That's not how animals move. That's training. The team watched in silence as the figures stopped suddenly, all 5 turning toward the drone. One raised what looked like an arm. Then, the feed froze. The screen went black, followed by a burst of static. Within seconds, every monitor and sensor in the base camp went dead. Power, signal, everything gone. Russell's instincts kicked in. This wasn't a coincidence. You don't lose power across every system at once unless something wants you blind, he said. He ordered the crew to secure the equipment and check the perimeter. But as they stepped out into the night, the air was thick with the sound of slow, deliberate movement coming from the trees. The hunt had just turned, and for the first time, Russell realized they might not be the ones doing the tracking anymore. Russell led his team down the slope into the valley, their flashlights slicing through thick Oregon fog. The night was dead quiet. No birds, no crickets, not even the wind through the firs. "This isn't right," he whispered into his radio. Every instinct from his military training screamed that they were being watched. They were following the coordinates where the 5 heat signatures had vanished from the drone feed just minutes earlier. Halfway down, the air shifted. Their headsets erupted with static so loud it hurt. Then came a deep, resonant sound from the ridge ahead. A heavy knock, like a tree being struck by another. A few seconds later, another knock replied from the opposite side of the valley. It wasn't random, it was rhythm, communication. Russell signaled the team to stop, hand raised. "Lights out," he mouthed. The forest swallowed them whole. Through his night vision, he caught glimpses of movement, huge, upright figures slipping between the trees, pacing them on both sides. "They're flanking," he thought. He'd seen it before, overseas, when enemy patrols tried to box soldiers in. But this was no human tactic he could explain. One of the crew whispered that something had just moved past their thermal lens. Another said he could feel the ground vibrate beneath his boots. Then came the rock. It whistled through the dark and crashed into the dirt behind Russell, heavy enough to break bone if it had hit. Not a warning shot, a range test. He raised his scope and froze. For half a second, a massive figure stood just 40 yards away. Its heat signature was pulsing, alive, and it was staring directly at them. Before he could call it in, every device shut off at once. Cameras, radios, thermal sensors, dead. No sound but their breathing and the thudding of something circling them in the dark. Russell whispered, "We're compromised. Move out, now." By the time they climbed back to camp, the forest had gone silent again, but the damage was done. Every thermal file, every second of footage from that night was gone. It was as if someone, or something, had erased the entire event from existence. Back at base camp, Russell and the crew tore through their equipment in disbelief. Every system that had gone dark was suddenly working again, perfectly. But when they opened the drives, all of the data from the night before, gone. The thermal scans, the drone telemetry, even the audio recordings, all wiped clean between 1:57 and 2:19 a.m. The files didn't show signs of corruption. They showed manual deletion. "That's not a malfunction," Russell said flatly. "That's human interference." Bryce Johnson, the producer, tried to stay calm, chalking it up to a glitch. But Russell had spent too many years in the military to buy that explanation. He knew what a digital wipe looked like. Deliberate, precise, intentional. When they checked the backup drive, it too was blank. The timestamps had been rewritten, as if someone had replaced the data with dummy files. "Someone cleaned it," he muttered. "Someone with access." Later that morning, when the team gathered for breakfast, their base tech reported something strange. The system's internal clock had reset to 2 hours before the encounter. That shouldn't have been possible without a full reboot. "We didn't just lose footage," the tech said. "It's like time itself jumped backward." Russell's frustration turned to suspicion. Who would want to erase the recordings? And why? He demanded access to Discovery's central data server to cross-check the upload logs, but within hours, the system was locked. The field tech, who usually managed their archives, refused to answer calls. When Russell finally reached him, the man's voice was shaking. "You didn't see what we saw," he whispered, then hung up. That afternoon, Discovery headquarters sent an encrypted message to the field team. "Cease discussion of Oregon data pending corporate review. All files are under temporary hold." Russell's gut twisted. This wasn't corporate policy. It was containment. Someone, somewhere, didn't want those recordings seen again. "They told us we were searching for evidence," he said later. "But the second we found it, they made sure it disappeared." It was the first time he realized the biggest secret in Expedition Bigfoot history might not have been buried by chance. It might have been erased on purpose. Determined to uncover the truth, Russell decided to go back, alone. A few weeks after the incident, he returned to Oregon without the production crew. Without cameras, without backup. He packed only essential: a thermal monocular, a satellite phone, a compass, and his old marine instincts. The coordinates from the deleted footage were burned into his mind. "If they're gonna erase the evidence," he said, "then I'll find something they can't delete." The forest felt different this time. It wasn't just silent, it was aware. As he hiked toward the valley where the drone had crashed, he noticed subtle changes. Trees bent in the same direction, rocks stacked in unnatural patterns, branches twisted high above his reach. It was as if something had been marking the territory after they left. At dusk, he found it, the drone wreckage half buried under wet leaves near a creek bed. The camera housing was cracked, but the main body was intact. When he opened the casing, The memory card slot was empty. No debris, no signs of weather damage. Someone had removed it. That wasn't an animal, Russell said later. That was cleanup. But the real discovery was a few feet away. Pressed into the mud was a single footprint, roughly 16 inches long, 5 inches wide, with visible toe impressions. The step depth indicated a weight well over 600 pounds. That's not human, he muttered, photographing the print from multiple angles. He emailed the images to a forensic analyst he trusted from his military days. The response came hours later. Whatever made that track was upright and bipedal. Too heavy for a man, too symmetrical for machinery. As night fell, Russell made camp near the ridge. Around 3 a.m., he was jolted awake by 3 loud knocks echoing through the valley. He froze, heart pounding, before responding with 2. A pause, then 3 more answered back. It wasn't random, it was a pattern. In that moment, he realized this wasn't just an animal leaving tracks, it was communicating. And for the first time in his life, Russell Accord, the soldier, the skeptic, the tracker, felt what it meant to be hunted. Russell's discovery sent shockwaves through the Expedition Bigfoot camp. Once he returned, he showed the crew his photos of the footprint and described the eerie knocks that had echoed through the night. But instead of excitement, he was met with silence. "Don't say a word about this," one of the producers told him. "Corporate wants everything from Oregon off the record." It didn't make sense. This was exactly the kind of evidence the show was built on. Yet, behind the scenes, it felt like everyone had suddenly been ordered to stand down. A week later, an anonymous email appeared in Russell's inbox. The subject line read, "Oregon, Containment Notice." Attached was a single-page memo labeled Confidential, Discovery Legal Division. It mentioned unauthorized data access, field irregularities, and a final phrase that chilled him: third-party review initiated. That meant someone outside the production, a group he didn't recognize, had taken control of their recordings. "We were no longer in charge of our own evidence," he said later. Then came the leak. A former production assistant anonymously posted screenshots of internal messages between executives. One line stood out: "Oregon footage classified as non-broadcastable due to anomalous imagery." Within hours, the leak was scrubbed, accounts deleted, IPs traced. The network denied everything, but the damage was done. It proved the footage existed and that someone had deliberately buried it. Russell, furious, went public in a live stream watched by only a few thousand fans. "They erased the truth," he said, "but they can't erase what we saw." He described the 5 heat signatures, the lost data, the erased logs, and the feeling that they had stumbled into something organized. "Whatever's out there," he warned, "it's not running from us. It's watching us." After the stream, Russell's emails began bouncing back. His phone glitched. One morning, he woke to find tire tracks across his rural driveway, deep, wide, and unfamiliar. That's when he realized the cover-up wasn't just digital anymore. It had become personal. In the weeks that followed, Russell began to notice things that made his skin crawl. Emails were disappearing from his inbox, unread. Calls from other team members dropped after a single ring. He'd catch glimpses of unfamiliar vehicles idling on the gravel road outside his Montana home. Same make, same color, always with tinted windows. "At first I thought it was paranoia," he said later. "Then I started seeing the same SUV in different states." One night, his phone buzzed with a restricted text message. It contained a single sentence: "Stop asking about Oregon." No number, no signature. The next morning, his laptop refused to boot, its hard drive wiped clean. Russell called the field tech who had originally handled the expedition's data. The man sounded terrified. "They took everything," he said. "Don't contact me again." Hours later, his number was disconnected. Russell was trained to notice patterns, and what he was seeing looked exactly like a counterintelligence operation. "This wasn't random trolling or fans messing with me," he explained. "This was surveillance. This was structured." Soon after, an anonymous email arrived in a throwaway account he'd created years earlier for fieldwork. The subject line simply read, "You were never supposed to record that valley." Attached was a grainy still image showing the 5 glowing figures from the night of the incident, mid-stride in the forest clearing. But there was something even stranger in the metadata. The image hadn't come from their drone. The thermal resolution was far higher, military grade. Russell brought the file to Bryce Johnson, who immediately recognized it wasn't from any equipment they'd used. "That's not our tech," Bryce said. "That's classified level imaging," which left only one conclusion. Another group had been in the same area, recording the same heat signatures at the same time, and they hadn't wanted the public to know. That was when it clicked for Russell. The Oregon mission hadn't just stumbled onto a mystery of nature. They had walked straight into someone else's operation. "We weren't alone in those woods," he said quietly. "We were in their airspace, and whatever they were tracking wasn't supposed to be found." Determined to find answers, Russell filed multiple FOIA requests seeking information about any government or military operations near Mount Hood during the week of the Expedition Bigfoot shoot. Weeks passed with no response, until, finally, a letter arrived. Every single request had been denied, with the same vague phrase, "No records found." But Russell wasn't convinced. "You don't get no records when aircraft are spotted on radar," he said. "That means there are records. They're just not for me." Locals from nearby towns began coming forward with unsettling stories. Hikers reported seeing black helicopters without markings flying low over the tree line. Hunters spoke of hearing engines deep in no-access zones long after midnight. One retired park ranger who refused to go on camera told Russell, "There's a part of those woods that isn't on any map. You cross that boundary, you'll meet people who don't wear badges." When Russell pushed the network for support, Discovery's PR department issued a generic statement. No classified operations intersected with the production of Expedition Bigfoot. But the more he pressed, the more doors closed. Crew members stopped returning his call. Emails were deleted from the show's shared server. Even his old friends in law enforcement warned him to drop it. "You're digging into something that doesn't want to be dug up," one said. Despite the silence, fragments of truth began surfacing. An anonymous user on a cryptid research forum posted coordinates matching Russell's Lost Valley. The user claimed it was part of an experimental tracking grid used by defense contractors to monitor large heat-producing life forms. The post was deleted within hours, but not before screenshots spread across Reddit and Bigfoot forums. Russell's theory grew darker. The 5 heat signatures weren't just unknown creatures, they were being monitored by someone else, maybe even contained. "Whatever's in those woods," he said, "somebody already knew. And the night we showed up with cameras, we weren't discovering it. We were interrupting it." From that point on, Russell wasn't hunting Bigfoot anymore. He was hunting the truth, and it was starting to look like the truth might be classified. Months passed before Russell heard anything new about the Oregon mission. Then, one night, he got an encrypted email from an unlisted address. No message body, just an attachment labeled "Recovered Segment." When he opened it, the screen flickered and loaded a short, corrupted thermal clip. 3 glowing figures moved through fog, side by side, in perfect unison. Behind them, a 4th heat signature trailed at a distance, smaller, faster, almost like it was watching them. Russell immediately called an old contact, a researcher from Oregon State University who had analyzed wilderness footage before. She ran the file through forensic software and confirmed it. The data wasn't fabricated. The movement patterns were real, and the temperature signatures matched living, breathing organisms, each over 600 pounds, radiating heat far above normal mammalian levels. They weren't wandering, she told him. They were patrolling. For Russell, that word changed everything. Patrolling. These weren't aimless creatures hiding from people. They were organized, coordinated, intelligent. "That's what the government's been afraid of," he said. "It's not just about proving they exist. It's about admitting they operate like us." He posted a still frame from the footage online. 5 heat signatures, one turning toward the camera. Within hours, the image went viral, then vanished. His accounts were suspended, His posts flagged for policy violations. Within 24 hours, his YouTube interview about the clip was taken down. Still, the damage was done. The footage circulated through private forums, underground servers, and encrypted threads, sparking a new wave of investigation. For believers, it was the closest thing to proof yet. For skeptics, it was another conspiracy theory. But for Russell Acord, the man who shot it, it was confirmation that the night in Oregon wasn't an accident. It was an encounter with something bigger, something being tracked, studied, and contained long before Expedition Bigfoot ever showed up with cameras. Today, Russell Acord rarely talks about Expedition Bigfoot. He's distanced himself from public interviews, focusing instead on quiet appearances at cryptid conventions and veteran retreats. But those who've spoken to him privately say he's not the same man who went into those Oregon woods. He's calmer, but colder, more watchful. He doesn't go camping anymore, one friend said, not without a firearm and a thermal scope. When asked directly if he still believes in Bigfoot, Russell never gives a straight answer. Belief isn't the issue, he says. It's what you do when you find out. Belief was never the problem. His tone always drops when he mentions the Oregon Valley. We weren't the first ones out there, and we won't be the last. Some think he's hinting at a government cover-up, others at something darker, an organized species capable of eluding modern detection, protected or studied in silence. The pattern of secrecy fits. Since 2019, reports of restricted access zones have increased across parts of Oregon, Washington, and Northern California. Former park workers quietly admit unofficial patrols have been spotted guarding certain areas at night. None of it is confirmed, but it all traces back to the coordinates from the deleted footage. In a rare podcast appearance, Russell left listeners with a statement that silenced the room. People think we were chasing monsters, but monsters don't move in formation. Soldiers do. Then, after a long pause, he added something that fans still replay online. If you ever see 5 of them together, don't film it, don't look back, just leave, because by the time you see them, they've already seen you. And that was it. No dramatic music, no outro, just the voice of a man who'd gone into the wilderness searching for proof of the unknown, and found something that didn't want to be found. It was supposed to be a normal night in the woods, another Expedition Bigfoot investigation under the stars. But then, without warning, the cameras stopped rolling. The crew abandoned their site and refused to speak about what happened. No one explained why. Now, years later, Ronnie LeBlanc has finally revealed the truth. That night, something massive and upright crossed behind them, moving faster than any bear or man could. The cameras captured only one frame before every light and battery died at once. And by morning, their camp was destroyed. Make sure you're subscribed, because what Ronnie described that night will send chills down your spine. It began like any other field shoot. Ronnie LeBlanc and the Expedition Bigfoot team had set up camp deep within a stretch of Oregon forest that had no official trails and no cell signal. It was the kind of place where sound carried for miles, and where, according to local hunters, the trees sometimes moved at night. Ronnie, the team's wildlife expert, wasn't new to strange noises or flickering eyes in the dark. He'd spent years debunking myths and tracking real animals mistaken for monsters. But that night would shatter every bit of logic he relied on. By sundown, the crew had set up thermal drones and perimeter sensors near a clearing where multiple two-legged bear sightings had been reported. At 12:48 a.m., the first motion alert came through. Something heavy was pacing just beyond the lights. The footsteps were spaced far apart, the rhythm steady and purposeful. It wasn't running, but it was moving with intent. They assumed it was a large elk until the next reading came in. 7 feet off the ground. That's chest height, not muzzle height, Ronnie whispered. Then came the sound, an echoing whistle from somewhere high on the ridge. Seconds later, another whistle answered from the opposite side of camp. Everyone froze. Wildlife doesn't whistle in sync. The fog thickened, and the forest went still. That's when the cameraman caught a glimpse of something between the trees, a shape that seemed to glide rather than walk. He swung the lens around, the autofocus catching a single frame of motion before the monitor erupted in static. Ronnie turned, flashlight trembling, and saw it for less than 2 seconds. A massive silhouette striding behind the tree line, upright, broad-shouldered, and gone in a blink. The ground shook as it vanished into the dark. Every piece of equipment powered down at once. Lights, drones, even the radios. "Shut it down," Ronnie ordered. "Now." That was the last footage they shot that night. What they didn't realize yet was that this single blurred frame, the only proof they had, would haunt the entire team for years to come. When the crew finally got back to camp, the air felt different, thick, heavy, charged. Every member was pale and silent. They sat around the dim glow of their last working lantern, watching the single frame play over and over again on Ronnie's laptop. In that blurred image, just behind the crew, a massive, upright shape could be seen mid-stride. Even with motion distortion, the scale was undeniable. Over 7 feet tall, shoulders almost as wide as a door frame, and legs longer than any human's proportions. The thermal signature burned bright orange, alive with heat. No one spoke for nearly a minute. Then the audio engineer, his voice trembling, asked the question no one wanted to. If it was that close, how didn't we hear it? The answer was worse than silence. The recording's background noise had dropped to 0 just before the figure appeared. No wind, no insects, no forest ambience. Like the world held its breath, Ronnie said later. They agreed to pack up at first light, but that decision came too late. Around 3 a.m., strange noises began echoing from the ridge above them. Slow knocks, evenly spaced, followed by a high-pitched whistle that faded into the distance. It didn't sound animal. It sounded intentional. Ronnie raised his flashlight toward the sound, and for a moment saw the fog shift unnaturally, as if something massive was moving through it. Then came the smell, a pungent, earthy odor like decayed moss and wet iron. "It hit like a wave," he said. "You could taste it." Seconds later, something slammed against the far tent, collapsing it inward. The crew scattered. One man tripped over a camera rig and shouted that he saw eyes in the tree line, 2 glowing amber orbs reflecting the lantern light. By sunrise, their sight was a wreck. Tents flattened, tracks everywhere, equipment cracked and bent. What shocked them most wasn't what was destroyed, but what was missing. Their hard drives, the main thermal drone, and Ronnie's notebook, all gone. It was as if whatever had come through wanted to erase any trace that it had ever been there. Back at the production headquarters, tension filled the editing suite. The Oregon shoot was supposed to deliver the season's biggest breakthrough, but instead, it had turned into chaos. When the crew returned with half their footage missing and the other half filled with static, Discovery executives immediately flagged the material as unstable. Ronnie LeBlanc sat in silence as technicians tried to restore the thermal data. But no matter how many times they scrubbed it, the same eerie result appeared. One clear frame of the figure, followed by complete system failure. "It's like something overloaded the sensors," the editor said. Whatever that was, it wasn't natural. Executives demanded answers. They questioned the crew's professionalism, suggesting maybe the fear of the woods had gotten to them. But when one technician ran a frequency analysis on the corrupted footage, something unexpected surfaced. A low hum in the background, too rhythmic to be random. It pulsed at exact 1-second intervals, like a heartbeat. "That's mechanical or biological," Ronnie muttered, "and neither should be possible on that wavelength." Behind the scenes, Discovery's compliance team stepped in. Within 24 hours, all unedited footage from Oregon was seized for review. Ronnie received a corporate memo instructing him not to discuss the incident publicly. The team's group chat was deleted overnight. "They acted fast, too fast," Ronnie said later, almost like they were expecting something to happen. Crew morale disintegrated. One camera operator quit the next day, claiming he'd been followed home by something he heard breathing outside his window. The audio tech refused to work nights again. By the end of the week, Expedition Bigfoot had lost half its Oregon crew. In private, Ronnie replayed that single frame until the pixels blurred. He wasn't sure what scared him more, the figure in the shot, or the way everyone suddenly wanted it to disappear. For the first time in his life, he began to wonder if Expedition Bigfoot had captured more than just evidence of a creature. Maybe they'd captured something the network didn't want the world to see. A few weeks after the Oregon shoot was sealed off, Ronnie couldn't let it go. He'd seen enough strange things on Expedition Bigfoot, but this was different. There had been evidence, and now it was gone. He decided to go back. No production crew, no network oversight, just him, a local guide, and a small camera kit. "I didn't care about filming," he said later. "I just needed to know if it was still there." The forest welcomed him with silence. Not peaceful silence, predatory silence. The same heavy atmosphere he remembered from that night pressed down like a weight. As they retraced the path to the clearing, Ronnie noticed small details most people would miss. Branches bent backward at chest height, piles of rocks stacked deliberately along the trail, and deep impressions in the mud that had hardened over time. They weren't random, he said. Something had marked that territory. When they reached the old camp, the remnants were still there. The metal poles of a collapsed tent, fragments of shredded nylon, and, astonishingly, one of the lost trail cameras half buried under moss. It was cracked open, but the SD card slot was empty. Someone had taken it, Ronnie muttered. Or something. They set up a temporary base and decided to stay one night. Around 2:30 a.m., 3 sharp knocks echoed from the valley below. Ronnie froze. Then, faintly, 3 more answered from the opposite ridge. The pattern was identical to what they'd heard years ago. His guide whispered, "It's calling back." Moments later, a low growl rolled through the trees, so deep it vibrated in their chests. The guide swore he saw movement, a shadow taller than a man weaving between the trunks. "Don't chase it," Ronnie warned. They stood their ground, lights off, listening as the sound circled them once, twice, then faded into the dark. At dawn, they found a single footprint pressed perfectly into the damp soil beside their tent. 19 inches long. Perfect toe definition. No claw marks. And this time, Ronnie didn't take a plaster cast. He just stared at it. "Because if I did," he said quietly, "something tells me I wouldn't have made it out of there." When Ronnie returned from his solo trip, he brought back only 2 things: the broken trail camera and a haunted look that even his closest friends couldn't ignore. He refused to speak to the press, refused to answer the network's calls. But word got around that he'd found something out there, something that made him want to walk away from Expedition Bigfoot entirely. Weeks later, the truth started to leak. A technician from the post-production team, who asked to remain anonymous, revealed that Discovery had locked away all Oregon footage under a new classification, Project Ember. The term didn't appear in any of the company's archives, and no one on the show's staff could access the files again. "That's not how network storage works," Ronnie said. "They didn't archive it, they buried it." Then came the strangest part. A single still image began circulating on cryptid forums late one night, an unedited thermal shot that matched the missing footage's description. In the center stood a hulking silhouette, head down, with arms nearly to its knees. The signature glowed hot, 108 degrees Fahrenheit, far too warm for an animal in cold air. Within 12 hours, the post vanished. The account that shared it was deleted, and the URL returned a 404 error. Ronnie tried contacting the editor who'd last handled the data. The number was disconnected. Later, he received an email from an unknown address. It contained only one line: "Stop looking for what doesn't want to be found." The message felt more like a warning than a threat. "I realized," Ronnie said later, "this wasn't about proving Bigfoot anymore. It was about staying alive." He'd seen networks cover up bad footage before, but never like this. Never with fear behind it. And when he finally got word from another crew member that even their backup drives were physically destroyed in transit, Ronnie stopped asking questions. "They don't erase evidence unless they're afraid of what it proves," he said. "That's when I knew whatever walked behind us that night wasn't just a creature. It was something someone didn't want the world to know existed." After the Oregon incident, Ronnie tried to return to normal life, but the shadows of that night followed him everywhere. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, swearing he heard those same heavy knocks outside his window. At first, he brushed it off as paranoia, until neighbors began asking about the strange noises echoing through the woods behind his house. It was the same rhythm, he said. 3 knocks, pause, 3 more. He changed his number after receiving anonymous calls at odd hours. The line would click once, followed by faint breathing, human but distorted, as if coming through layers of static. When he finally confronted Discovery about whether anyone else had reported similar issues, they denied everything. "No one's contacting you, Ronnie. an executive insisted. "You're just stressed." But the strange activity only escalated. His laptop's webcam light began flickering randomly, even when unplugged. One night, he woke to his back door wide open and muddy footprints on the porch. Barefoot, enormous. Police found no sign of forced entry. "You could see where something stopped, turned, and left," he said quietly. Meanwhile, fans online began connecting the dots. A few claimed to have intercepted fragments of the Oregon footage on leaked servers, though none could prove authenticity. One forum user uploaded a file titled "The Truth Frame." In it, the blurred silhouette from Ronnie's lost footage was surrounded by faint, smaller heat signatures, as if several figures were standing just beyond the trees. The post disappeared within minutes, replaced by a blank thread labeled "Access Denied." Ronnie stopped sleeping. He covered his windows, moved his desk to face the door, and kept a flashlight and camera by his bed. "I used to think we were the hunters," he said during a rare live stream. "Now I know we were the bait." That night, his broadcast abruptly cut out mid-sentence. When the feed returned, the screen was empty, just static, and the faint sound of 3 slow knocks echoing through the dark. The weeks after that night left Ronnie unraveling. Sleep became a stranger. Every creak of his house sounded like something stalking outside. He started hearing the same rhythmic 3 knocks that had echoed through the Oregon woods, on walls, on glass, sometimes on the ground beneath him. "At first, I thought I was losing it," he admitted later, "but when my neighbor said she heard it too, I knew it wasn't in my head." Soon, the strange incidents escalated. His motion lights would trip at exactly 3 a.m., but whenever he checked, the yard was empty, except for footprints too large to be human, pressed deep into the wet earth. He tried setting up trail cameras again, but the memory cards always came back blank. "It's like it knew how to stay invisible," he said. Then came the calls. Late at night, from blocked numbers, a faint static hum followed by breathing. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Ronnie recorded one of them, but when he replayed it, all that remained was a distorted growl beneath the static. He sent the clip to an audio engineer he trusted. The man called back a day later and simply said, "Don't send me that again." Even his technology turned against him. His laptop's camera light flickered randomly, even when closed. Files vanished from his desktop. Emails he never wrote appeared in his sent folder, each one empty, addressed to himself. Online, fans started whispering about a cursed episode, claiming fragments of the missing Oregon footage had leaked on underground servers. One grainy frame showed multiple heat signatures, 5 this time, circling the original silhouette. Within hours, the post vanished. Ronnie stopped talking publicly after that. He covered his mirrors, unplugged his cameras, and slept with his phone powered off. "You spend your life hunting for proof," he said quietly in one final interview, "and then you realize the proof found you first." By the time Expedition Bigfoot resumed filming, Ronnie was barely holding it together. He showed up quieter, more distant, and refused to camp overnight with the rest of the crew. "I'm done being out there after dark," he told production, but the network pushed back. They needed him. What they didn't know was that Ronnie had already reached out to someone off the record, a contact in Oregon, who claimed to know why the government doesn't talk about those woods. That meeting changed everything. The contact, a former Forest Service worker, told him that for years there had been unmarked zones around Mount Hood, where no research permits were approved and GPS maps glitched out entirely. "You weren't in public land," the man said. "You were in containment territory." Ronnie didn't want to believe it, but the more he looked into it, the more it fit. The electromagnetic interference, the power outages, the locked archives. "We walked into something classified," he said. "We just didn't know it yet." When he brought these findings to the producers, they froze. Within days, Discovery's legal team issued a cease and desist order against any crew member spreading speculative or defamatory statements about government involvement. It was worded like a warning, not a protection. "They were scared of what I might say," Ronnie later recalled. "That's when I realized this went beyond TV. Then came the breaking point. One evening after filming, Ronnie returned to his hotel room to find the door slightly ajar and his bag unzipped. Inside, his field notebook was missing. In its place was a note written on blank paper. "Stop digging, or you'll end up like the others." No one ever figured out who left it. But from that moment on, Ronnie refused to speak about the Oregon incident in public again. He started traveling under aliases, avoiding interviews, and turning down every offer to return for another season. "The woods keep their secrets," he said in one of his last interviews, "but some secrets have people willing to kill for them." Months later, Ronnie received an email from an anonymous address titled "Proof They Couldn't Erase." Attached was a heavily compressed video file, no message, no explanation. His gut told him not to open it, but curiosity won. The footage lasted less than 15 seconds. It showed a shaky night vision shot of a fog-covered clearing. At first, nothing moved. Then, slowly, a massive figure appeared at the edge of the frame, gliding silently from left to right. Its proportions were impossible. Long arms, narrow waist, a head that seemed to slope forward. And just before the clip ended, two smaller heat signatures appeared behind it, following in formation. Ronnie froze. He recognized the terrain immediately. It was the same valley from their Oregon site, filmed from a new angle, as if someone else had been recording them that night. "We weren't alone," he whispered. "Someone was out there with us." He took the file to a trusted contact who specialized in metadata analysis. The timestamps matched the exact night Expedition Bigfoot had gone dark. Even worse, the GPS coordinates embedded in the video didn't match their base camp. The footage had been captured from above, likely from a high vantage point or drone, but not one of theirs. "That's military tech," his contact said. "You were being monitored." Before he could dig deeper, the video disappeared from his hard drive, replaced by a single empty folder labeled "Resolve." Within hours, the same anonymous emailer sent one more message: "You've seen enough." The incident rattled him. He realized this wasn't just about what they filmed. It was about what someone else had already known. "We thought we were documenting a mystery," Ronnie said later. "Turns out we stumbled into someone else's secret." After that, he stopped trying to recover the lost footage. "If that was a warning," he said, "I finally heard it." But deep down, he knew there was still one copy out there. Proof that whatever stalked them in Oregon wasn't a legend. It was real, and someone had been watching the whole time. Today, Ronnie LeBlanc rarely speaks about Expedition Bigfoot. He keeps to small-town conventions, avoids interviews, and has quietly stepped back from the public eye. When fans ask him why the crew really stopped filming that night, he never gives a straight answer. "Some stories aren't meant to be told," he says with a weary smile. "Not because they're unbelievable, but because they're true." Friends describe him as changed, more cautious, more spiritual, almost haunted. "He won't sleep outdoors anymore, not even during daylight. You can't unsee what we saw," he once said. "It changes how you hear the world. You start realizing silence isn't peace, it's warning." Rumors persist online that one surviving copy of the Oregon footage still exists, hidden away by a member of the original production crew. Some claim it was sold to a private collector. Others say it's been encrypted and stored off-grid, waiting for the right moment to resurface. Ronnie refuses to confirm or deny it. "If it's still out there," he said softly, "maybe it's better left buried." But in a recent interview at a small cryptid expo, he finally let his guard slip. "That night, it wasn't just one," he admitted. "We caught more than we ever wanted to." When asked what he meant, he paused for a long moment, staring into the crowd. Then, barely above a whisper, he said, "They hunt in pairs." The room fell silent. Ronnie stood, adjusted his mic, and ended with one chilling line. "We went looking for Bigfoot, but something else found us first." And that was the last time he spoke publicly about Oregon, or about Expedition Bigfoot at all.